4:17 a.m., Boise, Idaho. An FBI evidence van backed into the loading dock of a leased warehouse on Freight Corridor Road. Agents in latex gloves began unloading server rack components, GPU cards stacked in anti-static trays, each unit cataloged by serial number. By noon that day, the count would reach 412 enterprise-grade graphics processors. Street value of the recovered hardware, just under $61 million. What agents called Operation Silicon Ledger had just entered its final phase. The hardware came from 3 data center facilities on the eastern edge of the Treasure Valley. The investigation had taken 11 months. It had involved 2 FBI field offices, the U.S. Attorney's District of Idaho, and a forensic accounting unit borrowed from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. 3 suspects were in federal custody. A 4th had not yet been located, and the person who started all of it was a 47-year-old overnight cleaning supervisor who noticed a key card in the wrong trash bin. Her name was Marisol Quintero. Quintero had worked overnight contract cleaning in and around the Boise metro area for 9 years. In January 2026, her company, a regional janitorial services firm, was awarded a subcontract to handle common area cleaning at the Cascadia Ridge Technology Campus, a private data center complex housing co-location infrastructure for 3 Fortune 500 cloud tenants. The campus covered 4 buildings across 11 acres east of the city. Access was managed through a layered badge system: green cards for cleaning crews, yellow for facilities staff, red for authorized vendor technicians. Quintero's crew cleaned lobbies, restrooms, break rooms, and service corridors from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., Tuesday through Saturday. They did not enter server rooms. They did not pass through the inner security perimeter. They collected trash from approved bins outside the restricted zones. The first Tuesday in November 2025, Quintero collected a discarded vendor access card from a wastebasket near the Building C service corridor. The card was expired, a red vendor badge with a cutoff date of September 30th, 2025. She set it aside, assuming a technician had forgotten to dispose of it through proper channels. She mentioned it to her crew lead, who told her to leave it with the front desk security log. She did. The second Tuesday, the same corridor's wastebasket contained another expired red badge, different number, same expiration date. She logged it again. The third Tuesday, a third badge, different ID number, same expiration period. 1 discarded badge is an oversight, 2 is unusual, 3 is a pattern. Quintero flagged it in writing to her contracting company's operations manager, who escalated it to the Cascadia Ridge facility director. The facility director, a woman named Petra Hollenbeck, pulled the badge records herself. What she found did not match the disposal logs. The red vendor badges at Cascadia Ridge were issued to contracted HVAC and systems maintenance technicians. They had a 90-day renewal cycle. When a badge expired, technicians were required to surrender it to the security desk and sign a disposal form before receiving a new one. The 3 badges Quintero had found in the trash had no corresponding disposal records. More importantly, the names on those badges were associated with an active vendor contract. The technicians should still be working on site. They should have renewed badges. The old ones should not exist in corridor waste bins. Hollenbeck cross-referenced the badge access logs for the previous 60 days. All 3 badge holders had logged dozens of entries, all during standard overnight maintenance windows, 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. But when she reviewed the physical access records against the HVAC maintenance schedule, several of those entries had no corresponding work orders. Badges swiping in and out of Building C server access corridors, late at night, with no maintenance job attached. She called the FBI's Boise resident agency at 8:40 a.m. on November 19, 2025. The call was routed to Special Agent Fortunato Vega, a 12-year Bureau veteran who had worked financial crimes and corporate fraud out of the Salt Lake City field office before transferring to Boise 18 months earlier. Vega took the call, asked Hollenbeck to preserve all badge reader logs and send nothing to the vendor, and drove to Cascadia Ridge within the hour. I went through the case timeline carefully, and one detail kept coming back. The entire investigation was triggered not by federal surveillance or a whistleblower inside the scheme, but by 3 pieces of expired plastic in a cleaning crew's trash haul. If Quintero had not noticed, or had not written it down, this would still be happening. Vega's first assessment was cautious. The anomalies were real, but not conclusive. Badges ending up in trash bins was irregular, not criminal. After-hours access without work orders could be a record-keeping failure on the vendor side, not evidence of theft. He requested 2 weeks of additional badge logs and pulled the facility's internal inventory audit records. The inventory records are where the picture changed. Cascadia Ridge operated under a co-location model, meaning the physical hardware inside the facility, servers, switches, GPU clusters, belonged to its 3 corporate tenants, not to the campus operator. Each tenant conducted quarterly audits of their rack inventory. One tenant, a cloud computing subsidiary operating under a parent company based in Seattle, had flagged a discrepancy in their most recent audit. 14 GPU server units listed in the facility manifest were not physically present in their assigned rack positions. The units had been logged as decommissioned and disposed via a standard hardware retirement form. The disposal vendor listed on the form was a company called Pacific Rim Systems Resale, LLC, registered in Tacoma, Washington. 14 units, each unit valued at approximately $85,000 at current enterprise pricing. Total value of the logged disposal, $1.19 million. The tenant had not ordered any decommissioning. The disposal forms carried the signature of Cascadia Ridge's former facilities vendor manager, a man named Darnell Krause. Krause had left his position with the vendor company 6 months earlier. Vega opened a formal investigation on December 3, 2025. He requested IRS CI support and contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office to flag the case. What they initially treated as a potential single-facility fraud involving 14 servers and roughly $1 million in hardware would, over the next 4 months, turn out to be considerably larger. The investigation's first phase focused on Pacific Rim Systems Resale. The company was registered in Pierce County, Washington, in July 2024. Its registered agent was a business formation service. Its principal officer of record was a man named Theodore Pash, listed with a Tacoma address. Its stated business purpose: acquisition and resale of used enterprise technology equipment. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit ran a corporate records analysis. Pacific Rim had conducted wire transfers totaling over $8 million in the 6 months preceding the investigation. Its buyers were a concentrated cluster of entities, 4 shell companies, all registered in Nevada, all with mail forwarding addresses and no physical offices. The Nevada entities, in turn, had wired funds to accounts in Singapore and the UAE. The hardware Pacific Rim was selling, according to seller invoices recovered through a federal subpoena, was described as surplus and decommissioned GPU accelerator units, enterprise grade. The units were sold in batches of 8 to 20. Buyers were documented as overseas crypto mining operations. GPU units identical to the missing inventory from Cascadia Ridge. Most people picture hardware theft as someone loading servers into a truck and driving away. That is not how this worked. This scheme exploited the administrative gap between what a facility operator logs, what a tenant audits, and what a vendor is authorized to remove. The forged disposal forms were the mechanism. They made the theft invisible inside the system's own paperwork. Vega brought in Task Force Officer Linnea Brandt from the Idaho State Police Financial Crimes Unit and forensic document examiner Calvin Oxner from the FBI's Western Regional Lab. Oxner's job was the disposal forms. The forms appeared standard on their face, but Oxner's analysis found that 3 of the 14 forms carried metadata artifacts inconsistent with the facility's document management system. The digital signature timestamps embedded in the PDFs did not match the access log timestamps that would have been required to generate them through the facility's internal system. 2 of the forms had been created in a version of document software not used by Cascadia Ridge's vendor management platform. The documents had been fabricated outside the facility system and inserted into the record. Krause's name was on all 14, but Krause had an alibi for 2 of the signature dates. He had been hospitalized for a minor procedure and was demonstrably not in Idaho. Someone had used his name and forged his signature on documents created after he left his position. This was the first major obstacle. The documents pointed to Krause, but Krause was a partial dead end. If he wasn't the sole author of the forgeries, the investigation needed to identify who else had access to his credentials and his signature template. During his time as facilities vendor manager, he had directly supervised 2 contracted HVAC technicians, a man named Bryce Halverson and a man named Emiliano Fitch. These were 2 of the 3 names that had appeared on the discarded badges in Quintero's trash haul. The 3rd badge had belonged to Krause himself. He was still coming onto the campus after his employment ended, using an expired badge that should have been deactivated. The badge deactivation process at Cascadia Ridge relied on a vendor-side administrator updating the access system within 5 business days of an employee's departure. That update had never been processed for Kraus. An internal audit traced the failure to a permissions gap. The vendor's site coordinator role, the person responsible for access updates, had been vacant for 3 months after the previous coordinator left. During that vacancy, badge deactivations were supposed to be handled by the facility's own security desk, but no formal handoff had been documented. An administrative failure had left an open door. Kraus had used it. Vega's team now had 3 suspects with confirmed unauthorized access and a forged disposal paper trail. They needed to connect the movement of actual hardware to specific dates and specific individuals. The badge logs alone couldn't provide that. Visual confirmation could. Cascadia Ridge's server corridors were covered by camera systems. Footage was retained for 90 days before automatic deletion. The investigation had begun just inside that window for some of the relevant dates. Agents from the FBI's cyber division and the facility's own security vendor spent 4 days pulling and analyzing footage at slowed playback rates. Think about what that job actually involves. 37 nights of server corridor footage at 1/4 speed, watching the timestamp on every cart movement, every door open, every rack panel removed. That is what Special Agent Yusra Okonkwo did over a 6-day period in late December 2025. What she found, on 11 separate nights between August and November 2025, either Halverson or Fitch, sometimes both, had entered Building C's server corridors during the overnight maintenance window. On each of those nights, they had removed server units from racks that were not listed on any active work order. The units were placed on standard equipment transport carts, moved to the loading dock, and logged out under cover of the same fabricated disposal forms. Kraus appeared on camera on 4 of those nights, not entering the server areas. He didn't have rack-level access, but present in the service corridor immediately before and after the hardware removal, operating as a lookout. The footage also revealed something the badge logs had not. On 3 of the 11 nights, a 4th individual was present in the service loading dock area. A man who did not badge in through the facility system at all. He appeared to have accessed the dock through a side door connecting to an adjacent parking structure, a door with a mechanical lock rather than an electronic badge reader. He appeared in camera range for between 12 and 22 minutes on each visit. He left with the equipment. That man was Teodor Pash. The registered principal of Pacific Rim Systems Resale was personally collecting stolen hardware from the facility dock at 2 a.m. The FBI now had visual evidence linking all 4 individuals to a coordinated hardware theft operation running from at least August through November 2025. The next question was scale. The 14-unit discrepancy flagged by the first tenant audit was, it turned out, one tenant's incomplete picture. When investigators served subpoenas to all 3 Cascadia Ridge tenants and required full physical inventory audits of all rack positions, not just the most recent quarterly cycle, the numbers grew. Tenant 163 GPU server units missing. Tenant 2, 41 units. Tenant 3, 88 units. 192 units total. At average enterprise valuation, approximately $16.3 million in physical hardware removed from this facility alone. The investigation then expanded its scope. Pacific Rim's transaction records showed purchase and resale volumes inconsistent with one facility's losses. The Nevada shell buyer accounts had received proceeds from Pacific Rim dating back to February 2024, 4 months before Kraus even joined the Cascadia Ridge vendor, which meant Pacific Rim had been sourcing hardware from somewhere before Cascadia Ridge. Vega requested a joint investigative expansion with FBI Seattle and the U.S. Attorney's Western District of Washington. By February 2026, the investigation had identified 2 additional data center campuses, one in Nampa, Idaho, one in Kennewick, Washington, where similar disposal form anomalies and badge access irregularities had occurred in the preceding 18 months. Both facilities had vendor relationships tied to the same regional HVAC contracting company that had employed Halverson and Fitch. The total hardware loss across all 3 facilities, reconciled against Pacific Rim's documented resale proceeds and adjusted for market pricing at time of sale, $94 million. Operation Silicon Ledger's takedown phase was coordinated across 3 jurisdictions on the morning of March 11, 2026. At 5:22 a.m. Mountain Time, FBI and HSI agents executed simultaneous arrest warrants at 4 locations. Bryce Halverson was taken into custody at his home in Meridian, Idaho, without incident. Emiliano Fitch was apprehended at a truck stop outside Twin Falls. He had been en route to a job site. Darnell Krause was arrested outside his residence in Eagle, Idaho, a suburb west of Boise, as he walked to his vehicle in the pre-dawn darkness. Theodore Pash was not at any of the addresses associated with his name. A search of his registered Tacoma residence found it vacant. His vehicle was located at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in long-term parking. As of the date of federal indictment, Pash remained at large. An international fugitive alert was issued through Interpol. His last confirmed location based on passport records: Dubai, UAE, March 7, 2026, 4 days before the takedown. There's a line in the indictment that reads almost like fiction. Under the count for wire fraud, the government lists among the items of evidence a signed receipt, a document Pacific Rim generated for its overseas buyers, certifying that each GPU unit was lawfully decommissioned enterprise surplus, free of third-party encumbrance. The man who signed that receipt, Pash, was personally collecting stolen hardware from a loading dock in the middle of the night. The receipt existed to make the theft invisible to buyers. The buyers may have believed it, or they may have found it convenient to believe it. Halverson, Fitch, and Krause were indicted on counts of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit theft of major artwork, the federal statute that applies to theft of goods valued over $1,000 in interstate commerce, and aggravated identity theft for the use of Krause's forged signature. Sentencing guidelines on the lead counts carry maximums of 20 years per count. Marisol Quintero was named in federal court documents as the individual whose reporting initiated the investigation. She was not a law enforcement officer. She was not an auditor. She held no security clearance. She was a cleaning crew supervisor who noticed a pattern that no automated system had caught, and no credentialed employee had flagged. She wrote it down. She followed up. Pash remains unlocated. Of the $94 million in recovered hardware value, approximately $61 million in physical equipment was seized and returned to the 3 corporate tenants. The remaining $33 million, representing units already sold and converted through the shell account chain, has not been recovered. The Nevada shell entities have been dissolved by state action, but the accounts they fed, in Singapore and the UAE, are subject to ongoing international asset recovery proceedings with no confirmed timeline. Here's what this case tells us about the infrastructure running modern enterprise computing. The physical hardware underpinning billions of dollars in cloud services sits in facilities where the single most effective line of defense, on 11 separate nights, was bypassed not by sophisticated hacking or insider access to classified systems, but by a forged PDF and a badge that nobody remembered to turn off. The gap between what is logged, what is audited, and what is physically verified is structural. This scheme exploited it for the better part of 2 years before a cleaning crew's trash route closed it. Is this justice served? Pashk is abroad. $33 million is gone. 3 men face trial. One woman's attentiveness to a recycling bin changed the outcome. If you want to follow where this case goes next, the Pashk fugitive pursuit, the asset recovery proceedings, subscribe so you don't miss the update when it happens. Will operations like this keep occurring at the infrastructure layer of major cloud facilities? Comment yes or no. The scheme here didn't require technical sophistication. It required access, paperwork, and patience. All 3 are still widely available. The network is dismantled. The administrative gaps that made it possible have not yet been closed industry-wide.